Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
We met on a Saturday morning with city dust in our teeth. Someone had smashed the windows of two cars on our block in South Philly the night before, and the block captain texted out a quick sweep call. I came down with a push broom and a roll of contractor bags. She showed up with a flat shovel, neon earplugs, and a bandana tied like she'd done this before. "Elise," she said, tapping her ear. "These make the glass sound less like glass." "In Noah," I said. I brought moral support and questionable technique. We worked from opposite ends of the curb until our brooms met in the middle. She laughed once, short and tired. "You live in the blue door." I nodded. "Nice paint." "Terrible draft." That was our first conversation. Paint and drafts, not fate. Elise was a school counselor in West Philly. Case notes, calls to parents at odd hours, a radar for what kids don't say. I wrote UX copy for a tech company off Market Street, the kind of job that lets you know exactly how many ways a form submission can fail. We learn each other by bus routes and lunch breaks, coffee at Rival Brothers on 11th, dumplings at Sokolov, where we both had $14 long, lazy laps along the Schuylkill River Trail, where people jog like they have somewhere they'd rather be. 9 months and we found a narrow 2-bedroom in-point breeze with stairs that leaned into the banister like a tired person. The radiators hissed like they held grudges, and the front door hit the jamb as if it were trying to make a point. We bought a door sweep, sticky weather stripping, and a thrifted rug the seller described as good at hiding scents. We taped a list inside the cabinet, grocery basics, and pretended that good systems could outvote chaos. The first arguments were boring. Dishwasher or hand wash. Thermostat politics. Why let's wear socks against her. I work with kids all day, I get heat. Laundry on the banister, her versus laundry inside the hamper, me. Theoretically, the big stuff snuck in on the backs of those. After hard days, she got quiet in a way that felt like I was being tested. After hard days, I got helpful in a way that felt like an instruction manual. We passed each other like SEPTA trains, visible, moving, headed for different platforms. She started staying late more. I started answering Slack after 9 again. We'd planned a weekend in the Poconos that kept getting pushed to after this site meeting and after this release. When the Green Line extension finally opened, we toasted it at the bar like it was our accomplishment. We still didn't take the trip. In March she got an email that lit her face up from the phone's glow. A 1-year fellowship in Oakland with a district-led trauma program, the kind she'd only allowed herself to talk about in future tense. "It's a year," she said carefully. "Maybe 2. Not forever. But not SEPTA distance." We made a spreadsheet, of course, you did, counting flights we couldn't really afford and tow I didn't actually have. On the third tab, in a cell that didn't require a formula, I typed, "What if we don't do the heroic version?" We set it on our stoop, wrapped in the same blanket, steam off our mugs like cartoon thought bubbles. "I don't want to ask you to come," she said. "I don't want to ask you to wait," I said. We sat there long enough to feel what the words did and didn't do. Then we went inside and divided the kitchen drawer like grown-ups. She took the sharp knives and the Dutch oven. I kept the colander and the wooden spoons that never splinter. With cast iron, the rule was simple. Whoever cooks with it more wins. She did. We said goodbye at PHL under a bad ceiling and a great sign. It wasn't cinematic. She hugged me like someone who knew the map better now. "You're steady," she said. "You make rooms calmer." I told her she made rooms honest, which sounded like a lie but wasn't. Then she walked toward security and I stood with my hands in my pockets, not waiting for a last look because I didn't need one. After she left, the house sounded like a house for the first time in months. Not empty, clear. I put felt pads under the chairs so the neighbors downstairs wouldn't know every time I shifted my weight. I adjusted the door latch until the front door closed with a soft click instead of an argument. I made a rule for myself that didn't require discipline to keep. After 8, no Slack. After 9, no decisions. I booked a sliding scale appointment at a clinic in Center City and said the embarrassing true things out loud, that I confuse fixing with caring, that I'm fine is cheaper than admitting I'm scared dim too much, or not enough, that I like lists because they keep me from having to ask. The therapist said, "What do you do when you can't fix?" And I told him, "I sweep." And we both smiled like we were letting each other off the hook and on the hook at the same time. Philly kept being Philly. The alley behind our place collected wind-blown trash like a hobby, so I adopted the storm drain and taped a little laminated sign above it. "If you see leaves, pull them. Thanks." I made a 1-page heat season guide for our building called 311 First, Then the landlord document dates, take photos of thermostat readings and slid copies under doors. A week later, a neighbor I only knew by their dog said thanks and handed me to soft pretzels, I communion. At work, I rewrote the coldest error messages into human sentences. Invalid input became we couldn't read that, try again. Error 504 became our server got stuck. It's on us. Support ticket tone changed. The volume didn't. That was fine. Not everything you care about is measurable where you want it to be. Elise sent photos at odd, wholesome intervals, a mural, a sky the color of a nectarine, a hand-lettered sign on a school door that read, "Please don't knock like the police." I sent back the school kill at dusk and the first time my basil didn't die. We didn't trade feelings. We traded weather. It was respectful. I ran into her once at reading terminal, she with a tote and a time limit, me with a pretzel habit. We did the house-sleep exchange and the house-work exchange and skipped the what-if. She said, "You look even." I said, "You too." We hugged like people who had finally learned the difference between nostalgia and data. That summer I became the kind of neighbor I used to make gentle fun of. I put a take leave basket by our mailboxes with a label maker tag that said, "Felt pads, zip ties, tape, thanks." A kid left a flashlight with dying batteries and a post-it that said, "Needs help." I replaced the batteries and put it back. He wrote works with 3 exclamation points. I did not police. On Fridays I started a quiet half-hour, no screens, no music, just tea and the fan. I set it to 7 OK bulb in the lamp and decided not to apologize for becoming a person who cared about Calvin values. I wrote 3 lines on a card by the door. Keys, wallet, phone call, mom Sunday, don't be a hero alone. I met someone eventually, but not because I was looking. Her name is Taryn. She runs the box office, a small theater in Old City, and can call a cable better than anyone I've ever met. We follow one rule that makes everything else simple. Fix your own stuff first, then offer. On Sundays we make soup and don't take photos of it. She leaves a hoodie and a toothbrush and doesn't ask for a drawer. I put a hook at her height by the door, not because I rate it in a listicle, but because she is shorter than me and I got tired of her bag living on the floor. There were still glitches. I almost texted Elise at midnight once when a song knocked me back into a year I didn't live in anymore. Instead I put my phone face down, wrote, "It's okay to miss people you don't belong to," made tea, and went to bed. In October, a neighbor's e-bike battery showed up in the hallway, plugged into an extension cord that made my skin itch. I printed the FDNY one-pager about lithium fires, knocked, and said, "Not coming as the hall police. Just this is safer inside, with a UL-listed charger. I can send you a link." He looked at me like it accused him of something, then softened. Next day the battery was gone from the hallway. A week later he showed me a charger with the right sticker. We fist-bumped in the most awkward possible display of community. By winter, our little building had a rhythm. Someone put out a salt bucket without being asked. Someone else taped a note to the laundry. "Please set a timer, machines get lonely if your clothes sit." The door closer I'd put on the front door did its quiet job. The leave basket refilled itself with paper clips and hex keys. The block captain texted, "You're good at making boring things clear." I screenshotted it and saved it in a folder called Small Wins. I don't know that there's a moral to any of this, and if there is, it's not clean. I love someone who left because the road in front of her went west. I stayed because my road didn't. We were careful with each other in the end, which counts. Now my days look like this. I send a 6-line status instead of a saga. I fix the squeak I can reach. I write error messages that say "we" more often than "you." I water a basil plant on Tuesdays and forgive it for being dramatic. I sweep the storm drain when it clogs. I set the lamp to warm and let the apartment make its small, competent sounds. When I lock the door at night, the latch fits the strike plate because I made it fit. The click is soft. It's not a movie cue. It's just proof. I stand there for a second longer than I need to breathe and say the sentence I promised myself I would say only when it was true. I'm here. For now, that's enough. A week after the titles started writing themselves in my head, life kept doing its quiet version of plot. The building chat pinged about a new neighbor dragging an e-bike and a bare battery into the hallway. Old me would drafted a paragraph, current be printed the FDNY one-pager, trimmed it to 3 lines and a checklist, and taped it to the cork board above the mutual aid shelf. Then I knocked, not as the hall police, just a person with a flyer and a tone. We read the tiny UL stamp together, found him a metal box online that didn't cost rent, and agreed the hall stays clear. No speeches, no shame. Taper clip, not stapler. Work warmed up in the same way. I finished a pass on our error states less scolding, more verbs, and added a slide to onboarding called What You Don't Need to Know by Friday. Watching two juniors exhale at Ask Early I don't know yet is a complete sentence, felt like removing a stuck drawer without splinters. Support sent a line I printed and taped behind my monitor. People stopped saying the act sounds mad at them. On Fridays I kept the quiet half hour. Lamp at to 7:00 OK, phone face down, just the building breathing, pipes knocking like cautious knuckles, the door closer taking that last inch without a bang. If a thought tried to turn into a speech, I wrote it on an index card. Most cards read like weather by morning. I ran into my ex at the farmer's market on a windless Saturday between tomatoes and the guy who sells honey like single origin vinyl. We did the quick inventory. Work, sleep, parents. She pointed at the tulips in my tote. For someone. For the lamp, I said, and watched the joke land without weight. At the crosswalk we split like train lines at a fork. No ache, just timing. Summer arrived sideways. Smoke in the mornings, a heat advisory by lunch. I built a Kirsirsonthal box in the lobby with Merv filters and duct tape. Mr. Al from 5A initialed the tape like a notary and wrote the date in librarian neat. Someone added a note: keep this outlet free. Wheelchairs, use it and it worked better than any policy. We revived the cooling corner, a chair, a pitcher, a fan on low, 10-minute charge limit in Sharpie. Little systems that keep the temperature down in more ways than one. The library asked if it run short. Polite texts that work again. We practiced replacing caps lock with sentences that leave room for a reply. A guy showed me his draft, turn it down, and we walked it to hate. After 10 it carries into the bedroom. Could you nudge it down? Thanks. He came back the next week with cookies and said, almost embarrassed, they apologized. People want scripts more than speeches. When the first storm of the season bullied the basement, we didn't spiral. I wedged the mop bucket to de-tape the threshold mark, called Miguel before anyone typed a paragraph about it. Rowan, who has become the person I split soup with, texted extra towels from upstairs and left them at the landing. After, I added door sweep before August to the folder on the shelf and clipped a pen to it. The building now edits itself. I mostly keep the paper fresh. A small pry. The city accepted a line I wrote for a school crossing sign: we see you. Cross quietly, and stuck it on a slim post that looks humble on purpose. I biked by on my way to work and watched a kid drag a scooter across the stripes like he owned the geometry. He didn't look up at the sign. He didn't need to. That's the point. I still get tested. A reorg memo landed at 4:56 p.m. on a Thursday with the subject line that makes you feel 12. I almost stapled the night closed with a deck no one asked for. Instead I wrote a 6-line status: what we know, what we don't, what well touch Monday, and then I turned off Slack at 8 like a person who meant it. The world did not end. Monday arrived on schedule, which I'm told it always does. The ex sent one more message in July. A photo of a stoop with potted rosemary and the caption: new place, same light. I answered, congrats, good light matters. It landed like weather noticed, not collected. Our building meeting actually felt like a meeting. We formalized the folder. Winter salt, heat numbers, walk like it's icy, summer fans, water. Don't prop the door. Electric no hallway charging. UL checklist, an emergency elevator script. Text stuck plus floor plus time we wait. Lydia, the former caps lock neighbor, pointed herself corkboard captain and started adding remove by dates like stickers. Order by pencil is still order. One night meant the cat who belongs to everyone, and no one stopped eating. The vet said it was he, and dignity. Rowan sat with me on the kitchen floor by the fan while Mint judged us from the cool tiles. You're good at getting to the point, they said. Practice, I answered. And a folder. Mint blinked once, then ate, proving that most crises are naps with bad PR. In August I taught a 15-minute hex keys without fear at the tool library. We fixed 3 wobbly stools, a lamp with the wrong base, and a drawer that sighed when it finally slid true. I wrote ask first on a scrap and taped it to the table. It might be my whole ideology. Fall tried to bring drama, a courier ignoring our packages to lobby map, a hallway debate about bikes. We did UX on humans. I stood by the door, pointed at the rectangle and the friendly arrow, didn't say a word. The courier shrugged, then comply. For bikes, hooks inside, loaner drills on Sundays, a sign that said no bikes in halls in a font that wasn't yelling. Compliance by tone is a thing. Work shipped the last of the talk like a person changes. Support sent cupcakes with a card. You made sorry smaller and here's how bigger. I kept the card and gave the cupcakes to the night guard, who said I was the first person to know his name on purpose. I wrote it on a sticky note anyway, because memory isn't always a muscle. The last time I saw my ex was proof cities shrink when your routines are honest. We arrived at the same crosswalk from opposite corners, lifted our hands in a hello, okay gesture, and crossed without breaking pace. The light changed, so did we. No score, no sequel, just traffic doing what traffic does. I still keep the notes above my desk. Call early, not louder. Taper clip if it holds, stapler if it doesn't. Enough is what runs again tomorrow. Tonight I do the lamp, stove, window, latch. The door closer takes its soft breath and closes like I said it too steady, unshowy, enough. I tuck a new page into the hallway folder, snow plan draft, and clip a pen beside it. Someone will add the line I missed. They always do. Then I say the sentence that fits better every time I use it, not as a mantra, just maintenance. I'm here. Tomorrow, tighten a hinge, rewrite a sharp edge into something you can breathe through. Refill the quarter jar. Text made the train. Short steps, counted. By the time the first flurries hit the streetlights, our snow plan draft had lost the draft. Lydia laminated it with the same solemnity she applies to the cork bore and taped it up next to the mailboxes. Someone probably added a Spanish column in careful block letters. I clipped a pen to the sheet with a bit of string so people could mark the I did this boxes. Salt the stoop, prop the basement door with the wedge, not a brick, check the hallway windows on the west side by noon. The storm that arrived wasn't cinematic, just persistent. The kind of snow that decides your schedule. At 7 a.m., the group chat pinged with our first test. Elevator stuck between 3 and 4. Anyone? It was a teenager from 1D, typing exactly like the script in the folder. Stuck +32 for +703. Lydia called the number on the inspection plate. I texted back the 8 and we see you. Well, wait. Nobody tried to pry the doors. When the car finally crept to a landing and opened, the kid stepped out red-cheeked and mortified, murmured thanks, and fled like we'd just seen him trip in gym class. We didn't make it a moment. That felt like progress. Work kept asking for small, unglamorous miracles. I led a plain language jam for the new team, 6 of us around a whiteboard, rewriting the harsh corners. We outlawed exclamation points and error messages unless the building was literally on fire. We replaced invalid with doesn't look right and submit failed with we lost the connection, try again in a minute. Afterward the support lead slacked me. Our inbox feels quieter. I added it to the little plaque pile behind my monitor. Proof that decibels aren't only sound. Rowan and I hit our first silly friction. Cable entropy. I keep cords cold with Velcro, labeled like museum tags. Rowan can glance at a nest and pull exactly the one needed like a magician drawing scarves from a sleeve. I found myself about to fix their system while they weren't home. I didn't. Instead, I wrote a sticky ass before tidying and stuck it to the inside of the drawer or only I'd see it. That night they laughed, kissed my forehead, and said, I like that we have different geniuses. We left the drawer half labels, half Rowan, and somehow it works. My mother visited for a weekend in December, her first time seeing my building since the mutual aid shelf grew a personality. She ran a finger along the laminated winter without panic page and said, You were a bossy kid. This is the kind version. I made suit and invited her to fix it in the lobby. She held the flashlight while I swapped a bulb on the stairs and then scolded me, gently, for standing on the second from top step. Later, in the kitchen, she looked at the tulips under the warm lamp and asked, Not nosy, just mom curious. Do you hear from what was her name? I told her yes, occasionally, and that the messages land like weather now. She nodded like it just describes seasons. Good, she said. Weather you dress for. January brought the kind of cold that makes metal sing. The radiators did their Shylock routine, not the angry concerto we used to live with. Miguel finally replaced the air vent. On the riser he left the old one on the mutual shelf with a sticky souvenir. Do not use. Someone tucked it behind the quick start guide, like a relic in a little museum of before. We had our first true hallway argument of the year. Bikes again, always bikes. The new couple into the insisted their front wheel wasn't really blocking. Mr. L. Cardigan, 5A went full headmaster. I almost drafted a paragraph long enough to be a newsletter. Taper clip, not stapler. I carried the loaner drill downstairs and said, Hooks inside are faster than this fight. Who's home Saturday? Rowan added. Well, bring the stud finder. Saturday arrived 3 hooks, up. To debake banana bread that tasted like surrender and thanks at once. The city sent an education inspector again lithium batteries, hallways, fire safety. He noted the UL checklist, the no charging in corridors flyer, the bilingual copy. Infrastructure with manners, he said. The same line he wrote down last time. We kept it. He left smiling, which I'm learning is not guaranteed in his line of work. On a quiet Sunday, my ex's name appeared in my inbox, an actual email, not a text. Subject: Scar found a second time. Inside, a photo of our old building's cork board with the postcard of a market stall pinned there, and beneath it, a second postcard of a different stall in a different city. 2 lines. Your folder idea migrated. It's doing good. I stood in the kitchen letting the kettle go 1 click too long, then wrote back, nice theft. Good light matters in folders too. No questions. No trapdoors. She sent a single heart, and the thread went still in the best way. The smoke returned early this year. We hauled the Kirsirenthal box back to the lobby. Rowan dated the duct tape Mr. L initialed it like notarizing air. We tucked a note by the outlet: leave this one free, wheelchairs need attend. The courier, who always ignores signs, read it, considered, and moved his plug. Tone works. Arrows help. One night the power stuttered, then died for 3 blocks. The building opened like a book. We put the battery lantern on the table, taped phones 15-minute each in fat marker, and lined up the portable chargers like loaves of bread. Lydia deployed her teacher voice exactly once when a teen tried to camp at the outlet. He rolled his eyes, obeyed, and later taped a thank you under the sign in lowercase. When the lights came back, nobody cheered. We exhaled, put the table away, and went to our doors. That, too, felt like progress. In February I sprained my wrist like a sitcom. Dad slipped on the stew because I pretended black ice was merely a rumor. Rowan wrapped it, put the kettle on, and handle the hex keys for a week without commentary. I learned to say can you without a preamble, which for me is official growth. At work I typed slower and talked more. The team didn't collapse. The app shipped anyway. Rowan and I had our first non-trivial argument, nothing dramatic, just the friction of 2 tired people on a Tuesday. I reached for the script we'd taught half the neighborhood. How I am, what I want. A doable request. I wrote, am overwhelmed and taking it out on cables. I want to not do that. Can we eat first and plan tomorrow? They texted from the train. Yes. Soup then plan. We ate. The plan became a list on the fridge. Call dentist. Fix wobbly shelf. Put bike hooks higher. The fight dissolved into verbs. By March the mutual aid shelf had grown a spine. Lydia started tucking remove by dates into the corners of flyers. Someone added a tiny calendar. The jar of quarters rotated between full and leave to for laundry emergencies. A new neighbor added a scissors on a string with a note that said, return to string, in oddly beautiful handwriting. I don't know who they are, which feels correctly communal. I kept teaching the small classes the library's short texts that work, the Tool Library's Hexkey Clinic. People arrived embarrassed and left with a sentence they could say out loud, or a drawer that slid the way it should. I started telling the same story at the end of each session. The elevator script, the kid who typed stuck +4 plus time, the door that opened without anyone needing to be a hero. It lands. You can feel a room lean toward, oh, this we can do. The reorg at work finally settled into a new normal. My remit became official. Write like a person, reduce apologies, increase guidance. I added a line I wish someone had given me years ago to the onboarding doc. If the answer is later, give a when. If the answer is no, give a because. It's boring. It's magic. Spring arrived in the city's usual non-committal way, buds, then sleet, then a day that smelled like wet dirt and possibility. I biked past the school where our sign lives we see you, cross quietly, and watched a crossing guard lift 2 fingers off a coffee at me. I saluted back like we were on the same shift. That night, before bed, I did the loop. Lamp, stove, window, latch. I slid a new page into the hallway folder, summer smoke plan draft. Filters, doors, water, and clipped a pen beside it. Someone will add the line I missed. They always do. Then I said the sentence that's less mantra and more maintenance, the kind of check you do like flipping a switch or testing a battery. I'm here. Tomorrow, swap the wobbly shelf anchors, ship a Kinder error, restock the quarter jar. Text made the train. Paper clip if it holds, stapler if it doesn't. Short steps, counted.